The New York Mets may have gotten the steal of the draft, selecting Carson Benge with the 19th pick. I'll break it all down in this clip from today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The New York Mets were picking at number 19 in the draft, and basically, for those of you who aren't aware how this works, they do rounds 1 and 2 on Sunday. Monday, it's 3 through 10. And then I guess on Tuesday, it would be 11 through 20 throughout this 2024 MLB draft. So the Mets were slated to pick at 19 because their first round pick gets docked 10 slots because of being a luxury tax paying team from last year. So 19 is not as ideal as a top 10 pick, but still a place where you can get a lot of talent. And I think the Mets had an absolute home run with Carson Benge. 21 years old. He is a two-way player from Oklahoma State. If that sounds familiar, the Mets last year drafted Nolan McLean, another two-way player from Oklahoma State. But these guys are different. For McLean, it was always sort of rumored and speculated that the hitting would probably fall by the wayside. The pitching was something that he was really drafted for. With Benge, it's the opposite. He's more a hitter than a pitcher. Right now, it seems like they might keep him as a two-way guy. He wants to keep trying it for now, similar to McLean. But funny enough, Benge let the cat out of the bag, which I think if you were paying attention, you probably would have figured, which is that Nolan McLean is not a two-way player anymore. He last hit on June 20th. He is just going to focus on pitching at an 849 OPS in high A, double A, 565 OPS. So McLean, no longer a two-way player. Benge for now is, but really what you have to be excited about with Carson Benge, it's the bat. So he hit 335 this past season, 444 on base, 665 slug, had 18 home runs, 2 triples, 24 doubles in 61 games. Meanwhile, he pitched to a 3.16 ERA in 37 innings. So there is something there with the arm, but really I'm excited about seeing that arm in right field potentially. You look at the future for the Mets, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but you have Drew Gilbert, who could be a center fielder. You have Jet Williams, who could be a center fielder. If you wanted to, you have Luis Acuna, who could be a center fielder. And now you add a guy in Carson Benge, who could be a right fielder with a cannon of an arm. That is exciting stuff. He will be a plus defender in right, but Chris Gross, after drafting him, called him a 5-tool center fielder, has the potential to be a 5-tool center fielder. I am thrilled about this pick also because I take all of my sort of cues when it comes to the scouting of players and all of the prospect stuff from the company I work for in Just Baseball, where I'm the managing editor. And we have Aram Layton, who is the co-founder of our company, who is as big of a prospect head as you're going to find. He spends so much time on the draft, on the minor leagues, just studying video on these guys. And he ranked the top 30 prospects in this draft. Do you know where Carson Benge ranked? Number 11. And if you were watching our stream with Just Baseball, as it was leading up to the pick, Aram said, I think the best player on the board is Carson Benge. The Mets got the best player on the board from our write-up on Just Baseball, which I will link in the episode description today, looking at the top 30 prospects in this draft, where, again, you can find Benge at number 11. Here are the strengths that he points out. He says, another legitimate two-way prospect. Benge was effective as a swingman for Oklahoma State with a low 90s fastball and a trio of secondaries, following up a standout redshirt freshman season. He missed 2022 with Tommy John. So with an even more impressive sophomore campaign, Benge is looking like one of the more intriguing outfield prospects in this class. After struggling to elevate in 2023, Benge slashed his ground ball rate by more than 10%, more than doubling his home run rate total to 18, while increasing his slug by 130 points. Benge really shows off his athleticism in the box, using his base well while creating plenty of whip with the barrel. He has great hand-eye with impressive swing variance to get to pitches in tough spots, boasting a zone contact rate of 92% and an overall contact rate of 84%. Now, all of that, again, written by Aram Layton on the site, but I wanted to read you the scouting report to give you a sense of what this guy can be for the New York Mets, because the thing that Aram is getting at here when he's talking about zone contact rate and contact rate, it's barrel control. It's a guy that has a good feel to hit, and a guy that has been a two-way player that had to rehab from Tommy John when he was in college. So now, yeah, he might pitch a little bit. He might be a Noel McLean style. He starts off next year potentially in high A, or we'll see if we see him at all this year. But he makes a couple starts or has a couple appearances out of the bullpen, gets up to double A, and eventually just abandons the pitching and focuses on the hitting. Because if he can just focus on that, what Arm talks about here as he gets to the outlook, he says Benge is a unique athlete who may just be scrapping the surface of the player he can ultimately be. He has a wiry build and could probably add some strength without losing any speed. It's not uncommon for two-way players to add mass upon shifting their focus from the mound. Adding strength could facilitate a simpler operation in the box. Benge is more of a projection play than the other college bats in this range, but he has the potential for a plus hit in at least average power while playing a viable center. He talks about him being, an above average runner, being able to play right field, if not stick in center. All this stuff talks about a patient approach as a hitter, walking more than he struck out when he was at Oklahoma State, and having a low chase rate as well. What you're looking at here is good plate discipline, good barrel control, and the potential to add on more power if he builds some strength, which if he just becomes a position player, that will likely happen, where all of a sudden a plus hit tool and setting yourself up with good discipline where you're getting yourself in good hitters counts. Also seeing that progression in college where he went from hitting the ball on the ground a lot to lifting more and already tapping into his power. He was asked during his media session what he wanted to get better at. He talked about being able to turn on the inside pitch and being able to lift more. So all of that is projecting forward a guy that is going to check the box on defense. He's going to have the speed. He's very athletic. He's got a good hit tool, so you don't have to worry about that. If the power's there as well, and he's got an arm as a pitcher, it's a 5-tool player. I think that's got number 19. He could turn into one of the steals of this draft. I absolutely love this pick by the New York Mets. And to make it better, you also have a new bromance because he and Nolan McLean, again, both two-way players from Oklahoma State. In his media session, Carson Benge said that they just clicked right away, both being gingers and two-way guys. It was just quick friends, and they are still, tearing up Rocket League as they play whatever it is, PlayStation or Xbox or PC, whatever. They play games online together still to this day. They've been talking a lot throughout this draft process. McLean has been talking up the Mets organization, and Benge was clearly very excited to have been selected by the Mets. He couldn't really hold back that excitement when you watched him talk to the media. So it was one of the teams he was most looking forward to potentially joining. And here he is. So I think the Mets, for having fallen 10 slots, they were able to get a player that has a really high ceiling, a player that could progress quickly because he's a college bat. It might take a little bit more time than a college bat that hit for 3 years in college and didn't have a lost season mixed in there, but he has all the tools. And if he just focuses on hitting, which I think will come, maybe not right away, but at some point next year or the following year, I think you're going to find out that this guy might just be a huge piece in the Mets future. We won't know until they start playing games, right? And that's why as the draft progresses, I'm not going to give you a detailed analysis on every pick 1 through 20. But the first round pick, you got to talk about, and an absolute steal it feels like to end up getting this guy after falling. Awesome stuff for the Mets, and hopefully they continue to find some other gems throughout this draft. And I will be talking about them, just not as in as much length and detail as I'm giving you on Benge. I hope you enjoyed that clip from today's edition of Locked On Mets. If you didn't catch the full show, I also discussed the end of the first half for the Mets, the remarkable turnaround this team has been on. Now, the front office should be commended for some of the changes they have made across this span to help the Mets get into this position to actually be contenders this year. I even mentioned a little bit about the second-round pick, Jonathan Santucci, the left-handed pitcher. So if you want to catch any of that, make sure you find the full episode of today's show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, do me a favor, if you like this shorter clip of the show, liked how I broke it up, please let me know in the comments. Might be something we'll try to do a little bit more moving forward. And I'll be back with another full episode on Tuesday covering the Home Run Derby and Pete Alonso, as he is a player, has a lot of narratives going on right now. I want to dispel some and also look at what could happen in the second half with Pete Alonso. Can he turn his season around? So make sure you tune into that as well.